Hello and welcome to my channel. So you are a project manager or you're a project member. You have been requested by the project board to produce an end of stage or end of phase report. And you're wondering, where are you supposed to start from? What are you supposed to include? What do you need to start? Don't look elsewhere. Let us start by simple definitions. What is a phase or what is a stage in a project environment? Understanding that definition is very important. So in normal cases, no matter what industry, no matter what type of project, or even the size of the project, it is very apparent and also very logical for you to be able to control what is happening in the project, all the way from the start up to the end. So how do you control this? One of the most important, can I say, block or category to control a project is what is called a stage. So what do we mean by a stage? A stage is a set of activities that can be run either together in parallel or they can be run one after the other within a specified period or within some specified baselines. I know that is a bit mouthful. Let me try to expand more on that. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're new to the channel and you find this video very helpful, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. I hope, depending on the type of the project you're actually implementing or you're running, you find there are some projects when you group or you categorize some project tasks or activities, you might be able to run them within a certain period, say within a week, for example, within a month or within a year. Some of them, for example, if I give you software, they might require sequential running of those stages. In some cases, you find, if I can give you an example, maybe it's a market research project, or it could be another general research project. You'll find that some of the stages can also be run in parallel. So what does it mean? A stage is going to form blocks of work that you're supposed to do from the beginning all the way up to the end. And it is very important that whatever the size of the project that you're implementing, you are able to, can I say, divide it into blocks of stages or phases. It gives you control. You're going to understand more as we go through the video. It's going to give you more control. Say, for example, you are running a construction project. One of the stages you can talk about is the foundation, for example. Or maybe you can talk of the brick wall, for example. You can even talk of the roofing. If it was software environment or project, you will talk about requirements analysis. You also talk about solution design. You talk about solution build. And then you also talk about testing. So those ones, you can put them as simple blocks. They help to simplify any complex project. I've done it in my experience. I had a certain project which was very, very complex, and it was a banking project where we had to change the old system and replace it with a new system. And also at the same time, we were also changing the application which was being used by channels or integration into the core banking system. So that was more of a complex project. So what I had to do was to divide it into blocks all the way up to the go live date. So my advice is, each time you're given any project, look for opportunities to group specific activities, look for opportunities to group specific tasks so that you create those specific stages. So understanding a stage or a phase in a project environment is very important. I'm going to be using these two words interchangeably because it depends on what type of project or which part of the continent or the world are you implementing this project. Normally you can use either phase or you can use a stage. So these stages, they have to be managed. You manage before you go into the stage. You also manage before you leave the stage. That is very, very important. There's only one exception throughout my experience, which I've seen, is when you are planning for initiation of the project. Normally, what you should do is before you leave a certain phase, you plan for the next phase. But for initiation stage, it's more of an exception because there is no preceding phase which you can talk about. So initiation stage is the only stage where you have to plan within the same phase what you need to do. You also need to plan what you need to do for the next stage. So you need to take note of that. Every project, every stage must be planned before you start that particular stage. So understanding what is a stage in a project environment is very, very important. After understanding what is a stage, it is also important to appreciate that it's a form of control that you can put in a project environment. So now you have understood what is a stage. You now need to plan. Each and every stage before you start it, except for initiation, I said before you start it, it must be planned. I'm telling you, you are not a good project manager. That is my own view. If you have got a different view, let me know in the comment section. So you're not a good manager if you just end up in a project environment. If you just end up in a project stage. If you just end up in a project phase without planning. It is quite important that you look at what activities are supposed to be done. You also look at what deliverables are you supposed to produce from that particular phase. You also look at how are you going to manage some risks. You also look at how are you going to manage some issues. So it is quite important that as a project manager, you understand the planning levels. I'll quickly take you through the planning levels so that it makes sense. So in project management environment, you normally have 3 planning stages or plans that you work with. The first one, which is the highest, is what is called a project plan. A project plan in most cases is a high level, although making sense, but it's a high level with a start and an end date. But as you go down, you are now supposed to plan for a stage. So it's called a stage plan. So in the middle, you're supposed to have a stage plan. Except for project plan. Any other plan that you're going to have, it can be multiple times or iterative. I'm going to explain it better. So after the stage plan, you're also going to have what is called a team plan. So the difference between these 3 planning stages is the details. Project plan, high level. Stage plan, more details and iterative, which means you have so many stages in a project. Then team plan, very, very detailed and also iterative, which means you're going to have more. So as you move from the start of the project up to the end, as you get into each and every stage, you also need to plan it. When you finish the first stage, you plan it, finish, you plan the next one, finish, you plan the second one, like that. So once you're planning the stages, you also need to be very clear in terms of what are you going to produce for each and every stage, which is what is called project deliverables or project products. It depends on what you want to call them. So each and every stage must have defined project deliverables or products, whatever you're going to produce in that stage. It could be a document, it could be a physical item, it could be even just a result. It might not be tangible, but it could be a result or a benefit. You must be very clear on what you want to produce, then you're able to plan for it. For you to be able to plan, you also need to come up with what is called team plans, which means for each and every team, you assign them work to produce that particular deliverable. So it is also very important that you plan before you start the stage, you plan after the stage. So that is why we're calling it a stage or phase boundary. So this is the purpose of this video, to explain to you exactly what are you supposed to do and what are you supposed to act on during this stage boundary. Let's go to the beginning now. Before you move on to any phase of the project, you need that phase to be approved, okay? So what do I mean by this? A project board actually runs or owns. A project board owns the project, and the project manager runs the project on behalf of the project board. If you want to understand more about roles and responsibilities of a project board, I have a video on project board responsibility. You can also check it to understand and also to appreciate what is a project board, what are they supposed to do. So, before we move on to the next phase, as part of the control and also information sharing in a project environment, you are supposed to inform the project board. How do you inform them? You inform them through an end stage report. So imagine yourself as a project board member. If I just ask you to approve me to go to the next stage, obviously you have so many questions. Some of the questions are, what issues did you face in the current phase? For example, what risks are there? Is the business case still valid, as an example? You might even ask in terms of quality. How did you achieve the quality criteria that was agreed? Are the quality methods still valid? If you want to understand more about quality, I also have a video on how to manage quality in a project environment. So you're going to have so many questions. Have you updated your plan, as an example? They'll ask, have you also planned for the next stage? These are some of the questions which are going to come. In terms of risk, do we still have the same risks that we had? Do we still have the same risk categories? If you want to dive deeper into understanding risk categories, I also have a video on risk categories. You can also check it on my channel. I have created a template on the end stage report, which you can also download in the link in the description below. Okay, they can even ask, in terms of responses, how are we going to respond to some of these risks? Is it still the same like what we're doing in the first stage before we go to the next one? Also, if you want to understand about risk responses, I also have a video on risk responses. You can also watch it on my channel. So all these questions, you need to answer them, especially if you're a project manager. But how do you answer them? How do you pre-answer them? You create a report that is called end stage report. So this end stage report is actually triggered in two ways. For example, if the stage or the phase was running normally, no big challenges, everything is going according to plan. It's also possible that we have situations like that, where everything is going up to plan. It's running normally, everything is going up to plan, and then we are done with the phase or the stage. So you now want to move on to the next one. So that's a normal progression of a stage from start up to end. So you still need to produce what is called an end stage report, so that when you go to the project board, they do what is called end stage assessment session. So with this end stage report, there are a number of things you need to capture in this end stage report. I'm going to take you through this report because it's quite important for you to master. The second stage, or the second trigger that can cause you to create an end stage report, is what is called an exception. Or maybe there's an issue, there's a challenge. You have now discovered that in terms of the tolerance, or in terms of the baselines which were approved by the project board, you are not going to make it within the expected timelines, or even cost, or even scope, or even risk or benefits. If you want to understand more about project baselines, I have a video on project baselines. You can also watch it on my channel. So you have discovered that you are not able to make it within the baseline items, either cost or even time. So you need to readjust. You cannot pretend as if things are going to adjust themselves. You need to readjust yourself. And one of the things that you have to readjust is obviously your plan. So you create what is called an exception plan. An exception plan is just an adjustment. Either, if you are lucky, you can bring back the project on track, or for example, you want to make sure that at least you recover the lost time without affecting much of the deviation of the ultimate project. So you create an exception plan. Within this exception plan, you also create an exception report. So why this exception? You want to replan the work that is outstanding. Don't make a mistake I've seen most project managers do. When they are preparing exception reports, they try to plan for everything again. That is not going to work. The expectation is when you're doing exception planning, you start from where you have ended. Whatever has been produced or closed in terms of deliverables, you don't need to plan for them. You only plan from where you are to where you're expecting yourself to finish that specific stage. That is very, very important. In my projects, that is one thing I'm always watching out for. Whatever I've done, I've closed, I don't need to repeat it. Unless if you're doing a project which requires a repetition, which is normally very rare in terms of deliverables, you start from where you are all the way up to the end of the expected stage. So that is very, very crucial as a project manager. So just to summarize, these are the two triggers of end stage report. You need to understand it very well. Either the project is finished normally, so you're closing the stage. Either the stage is finished normally, and therefore you're closing the stage. That is first trigger. So you create an end stage report, you submit for end stage assessment to project board. Then number two is there's an exception or there's a challenge. You're not going to make it either based on the tolerances or it's even based on the baselines that have been approved. I'll give you a good example. You have just been asked or you're planning to run a stage within $100,000 as an example. And then you've realized that it's going to cost you probably an additional 40 to make it 140,000 US dollars. And your tolerance is only 10, which means you're expected to run it either from 100,000 to 110, but you're already to 140. So that's already an exception, which means you need approval because that is now beyond what you have budgeted for. So that is also a trigger, which means you have to stop what you're doing, you create that report, you submit, you get approval for the additional budget. In some cases, you might not need to stop, but you just have to engage the project board to do additional approval. Before they do additional approval, make sure your exception report, your exception plan, they are all in place because that is what you're going to present to convince them to approve it for you. So that is very, very important. If you want me to create additional videos based on what we have gone through in this video, maybe there's a concept which is not clear, or maybe there's an idea which is not clear, you can reach out to me or you can let me know in the comment section below. If you want